Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Venezuela has accused the United States of the greatest extortion in history as the Trump administration ramps up economic and military pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. During an emergency UN Security Council meeting Tuesday requested by Venezuela, Russia and China strongly condemned the Trump administration's escalating attacks, including the seizure of Venezuelan oil tankers and the relentless bombings of boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, told the Council the Trump administration would be imposing sanctions on Maduro to the maximum extent. As critics warn, the United States is ushering in a regime change to appropriate Venezuela's resources. Venezuela holds the world's largest oil reserves. Meanwhile, Venezuela's National Assembly has passed a law enacting harsh penalties for piracy in response to the U.S. seizure of Venezuelan oil tankers. This is Venezuelan Assembly member Jorge Rodriguez.
In consideration, honorable deputies, those in favor of approving the second discussion of the bill for the protection of freedom of navigation and trade against piracy, blockade, and other illicit international acts, please indicate with you. The law is approved unanimously.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz is walking back his comments that Israel plans to resettle the Gaza Strip after suggesting the Israeli military would never leave the besieged enclave. Speaking at a settlement in the occupied West Bank, Katz mentioned Israel could establish military outposts in northern Gaza.
We are deep in Gaza, and we will never leave Gaza. We are there to defend, to prevent what happened. We are standing. As we said, we trust the Rock of Israel and the IDF in defending Israel in a fierce battle between jihadist enemies of this kind and Israeli enemies of this kind.
Since the U.S.-brokered ceasefire went into effect in October, Israel's constructed at least 13 new military outposts inside Gaza, primarily located along the Yellow Line in eastern Khan Yunis, according to satellite imagery reported by Dropsite News. This comes as a former close aide to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Netanyahu asked him after Hamas's October 7th attack to come up with a plan to avoid blame for Israel's security failure. Netanyahu's former spokesperson, Eli Feldstein, made the accusation in an interview as he faces trial for allegedly leaking classified information to the press. In the interview, Feldstein said he was instructed by Netanyahu to silence calls for accountability. Meanwhile, Netanyahu appeared in court in Tel Aviv on Tuesday. He's facing charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse.
We're here this morning, the same as every week since the beginning of the trials of Benjamin Netanyahu, protesting to make sure that these trials go as planned, that Mr. Netanyahu does not receive a pardon, does not escape responsibility for the crimes that he's being judged and the crimes that he's going to be judged for, which are the more serious ones. But he's going to pay.
In Britain, Swedish activist Greta Thunberg was arrested in London Tuesday for taking part in peaceful protests expressing solidarity with a group of Palestine Action political prisoners on hunger strike. Greta Thunberg sat outside the building of an insurance company holding a sign that said, "I support the Palestine Action prisoners. I oppose genocide," unquote. Activists said the insurance company, Aspen, provides services to Elbit Systems UK, a subsidiary of an Israeli weapons manufacturer. Earlier this year, the British government banned Palestine Action under its Terrorism Act. The Palestine Action prisoners started a hunger strike as they await trial, demanding, among other requests, to be released on bond. At least 2 of the hunger strikers have refused food for over 50 days, with doctors warning they're at risk of death. Days after the December 19th deadline for the release of all files related to the late serial sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and under enormous pressure. The Justice Department released more than 11,000 files Tuesday, totaling nearly 30,000 pages of documents. This includes emails sent between FBI personnel back in 2019 mentioning 10 possible co-conspirators of Epstein. One is described as a, quote, wealthy businessman in Ohio. The emails also detail that, quote, 3 have been located in Florida and served grand jury subpoenas. 1 in Boston, 1 in New York City, and 1 in Connecticut were located and served, unquote. Ghislaine Maxwell is the only Epstein accomplice to be charged criminally and is currently serving a 20-year sentence on federal sex trafficking charges. The Justice Department is desperately looking to hire outside attorneys to work on redactions in the Epstein files it continues to hold. We'll have more on this story after headlines. The Supreme Court Tuesday blocked the Trump administration's deployment of hundreds of National Guard to the Chicago area. The High Court sided with U.S. District Judge April Perry, who first blocked the deployment of troops to Illinois back in October. In a 6-3 decision, the majority wrote, quote, at this preliminary stage, the government has failed to identify a source of authority that would allow the military to execute the laws in Illinois, unquote. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker hailed the ruling as, quote, a big win for Illinois and American democracy, unquote. Just minutes after the Supreme Court blocked President Trump's deployment of federal troops to Chicago, Louisiana's Republican Governor Jeff Landry announced 350 National Guard troops will arrive in New Orleans before New Year's Eve and will stay through February. The troops are expected to join Border Patrol agents who've been cracking down on immigrants in New Orleans. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is suing Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, challenging state laws that restrict immigration arrests at courthouses, hospitals, daycare centers, and public universities. ICE's so-called Operation Midway Blitz has led to the arrest of more than 4,000 people in the Chicago area. Data shows only 15% had criminal offenses, which are mostly comprised of minor traffic offenses, misdemeanors, or nonviolent felonies. Jillian Kaler, a spokesperson for Governor Pritzker, said, quote, the Trump administration's masked agents are not targeting the worst of the worst. They're harassing and detaining law-abiding U.S. citizens and black and brown people, unquote. A federal judge ruled Tuesday the Trump administration must restore federal disaster aid to 12 states that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, had reduced more than $233 million from Connecticut, Delaware, the District of Columbia, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. In a statement, the Massachusetts Attorney General, Andrew Joy Campbell, said, quote, this victory ensures the Trump administration cannot punish states that refuse to help carry out its cruel immigration agenda, particularly by denying them life-saving funding that helps prepare for and respond to disasters and emergencies, she said. The Trump administration's banned abortion care for veterans nationwide. The Department of Veterans Affairs Monday issued an internal memo confirming it'll no longer provide abortion assistance even in cases of rape, incest, or threats to life and health. The policy shift includes U.S. states where abortion is still legal. The move eliminates abortion protections issued for veterans by the Biden administration in 2022 after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. The Center for Reproductive Rights said the rule change was ushered through by the White House Budget Director Russell Vought and VA Secretary Doug Collins, who are openly anti-abortion. Nancy Northup, president and CEO of the Center for Reproductive Rights, said in a statement, quote, everyone should be appalled by this heartless policy. President Trump said he would leave abortion to the states, but he continues to seize new opportunities to restrict it nationally, unquote. The Trump administration will resume garnishing the wages of people who are on default on their student loans starting in January. Billionaire Linda McMahon, head of the Education Department, told the Washington Post her agency has already notified some 1,000 student loan borrowers that their pay will be seized. Approximately 5 million people are in default. This comes after the Trump administration began withholding tax refunds and Social Security benefits from some student loan borrowers in default, as it also slashed affordable repayment options for millions of people. Persis Yu, Deputy Executive Director of Protect Borrowers, said in a statement, quote, "At a time when families across the country are struggling with stagnant wages and an affordability crisis, this administration's decision to garnish wages from defaulted student loan borrowers is cruel, unnecessary, and irresponsible," she said. Sudan's prime minister presented a plan to the United Nations Security Council Monday seeking to end Sudan's devastating war, which has led to the world's worst humanitarian crisis since it erupted in April 2023. The plan would see the UN, Arab League, and African Union monitor a ceasefire and the withdrawal of rapid support forces paramilitaries from territories under their control. RSF fighters would be placed in camps and disarmed. Those not implicated in war crimes would be reintegrated into society. It's highly unlikely the RSF will agree to such terms. Meanwhile, a senior UN official warned the continued flow of high-tech weaponry into Sudan is worsening an already dire humanitarian crisis. This is UN Assistant Secretary General Mohammed Khalid Khiari.
Mr. President, the continued supply of weapons, increasingly sophisticated and deadly, remains a key driver of the conflict. Sudan is saturated with arms. Calls to end these flows have gone unheeded, and there has been no accountability.
Human rights groups have called on the Trump administration to end arms transfers to the United Arab Emirates until it stops arming RSF paramilitaries who've committed genocide, according to an assessment by the State Department. Meanwhile, fighting continues in Sudan. On Monday, the Sudanese army announced it had recaptured a town in North Kordofan state. Elsewhere, Doctors Without Borders is warning of a rapidly spreading measles outbreak in Sudan's Darfur region, where hundreds of thousands have been displaced by an RSF offensive. In Colorado, longtime immigrant rights activist Jeanette Vizquera Ramirez has been released from ICE jail after nearly 10 months of detention. She reunited with her family on Tuesday following her release on bond. Vizquera was arrested in March, ambushed by ICE agents during her work break at Target, and later transferred to an immigration jail in Aurora run by the private prison company Geo Group. Jeanette Vizquera gained national attention in 2017 when she took sanctuary at a Denver church along with her 4 children, 3 of whom are U.S.-born, to avoid deportation. I spoke to Jeanette Vizquera yesterday. We'll have more on her release later in the broadcast. And Betty Reed Soskin, the U.S.'s oldest park ranger, died at the age of 104. 104 years old. She first became a park ranger at 85 and worked at the Rosie the Riveter World War II Home Front National Historical Park in Richmond, California. During World War II, Soskin worked as a file clerk in a segregated union hall in the San Francisco Bay Area. In the 60s, Soskin held fundraisers to support the Black Panthers. In a 2015 interview with the Interior Department, Soskin said, quote, "When I'm on the streets or on an escalator or elevator, I'm making every little girl of color aware of a career choice she may not have known she had," unquote. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.